If you've recently jumped ship from MTB to eMTB, bravo and good job, you'll have entered into the world of this, and this. And you'll have said goodbye to this, this, and this. The eMTB is the true evolution of MTB, opening up new opportunities and widening your horizons. It is very much a new experience. And with up to 1,000 watts peak power and a little bit more weight behind you, that's going to mean you're going to be tackling some crazy steep climbs, and also it's going to give you stability on the most technical of descents. We are here in the beautiful Finale Ligure, which is the perfect place to show you how to unlock those gains and evolve your MTB techniques. Well, here we are at the fort. Now, if you just had your first e-mountain bike experience, it doesn't take me to tell you just how different the experience is both up and downhill. I mean, it's just a better bike, right? No, I'm only joking. Actually, no, do you know what? I'm not joking. These bikes just have so much potential when it comes to adventure. And I think when it comes to riding techniques, you definitely do need to evolve your mountain bike techniques to suit the eMTB. Now, don't get me wrong, such things as descending aren't that different from a mountain bike. I mean, true, the added weight is going to give you a little bit more grip. You will need to brake in different points going into the corners. And I think when it comes to jumps, if you do jumps, that is, you're probably going to be jumping further than you would on an MTB. But I actually think it's in the uphill possibilities, the more technical climbs you can ride, the steeper hills, the more extended climbs on single track, where actually it becomes quite a physical activity where you do need to adapt to get the most out of these bikes. And I say that because each of the bikes have got different motors, and all the motors have got different personalities. So it's about how you interact with the motor, such things as overrun, which might be a new feature. You've got mode choice. So in this video, I'm going to show you a few key rider skills which you might need to tune into to get the most out of your eMTB. Now, the first consideration is range. Now, you could possibly ride a mountain bike, in theory, until you keel over. That's not quite the case with an e-mountain bike, although you could actually pedal with the motor off. And on some bikes, it's actually quite easy because there's no drag in the system. However, most of the time, you are limited by how much battery, how much fuel you have in the tank. So the more fuel you have in the tank, the more range you have. The lighter you are, the more range you have. So you could, I suppose, in theory, go on an e-mountain bike ride. You could take your charger with you. You could plug in a shop or a garage or a pub or something like that. And you could, I suppose, keep going until you're physically exhausted. But certainly range is definitely a thing you need to get into your mind, which is a big difference between mountain biking and e-mountain biking. So I think you could argue that there is an element of planning involved with some e-mountain bike rides. But then again, I think the great beauty, the great romance of an eMTB is just the ability and the mindset just to wander. Now, the next point is the fact that you now have, on an eMTB, you now have modes, eco, trail, boost, turbo, as well as your gears. So you've got handlebar controls for modes, you've got handlebar controls for gears. So there's lots going on. The great thing about modes and the gearing is when you use them combined, you can actually tackle some incredibly technical uphill terrain on an eMTB, which you might not be able to do on an MTB. So I think that whole business of possibilities on an eMTB leads me to my third point, which is you might actually do a different type of riding on a bike such as this. So it might be a case of you might need to broaden the sphere of where you ride your bike. I'm going to take a moment in the video to introduce you to how a combination of those techniques will be used when you're out on the trail. Now, this is a one-way climb-only trail, and I think the e-bike really has encouraged more regions and trail areas to get this kind of trail into the into the network. Right, number one is that you need to go from a lower power mode to a higher power mode. So as an extreme example, from eco up to turbo. Now the great thing about the higher modes is that you're going to get a bit of overrun. Now overrun means the motor will keep on turning the cranks to enable you to get a momentary breather whilst you're tackling something technical. Number two is gearing. A high heavy gear certainly won't get you up this hill, even if you do have a motor. So go for a light, easy spinning gear on a climb like this. Number three is anticipation and scanning, because it's only then can you read the trail, which gives you momentum, because momentum is very different to what you'd be doing on a mountain bike. It's quite likely you'd be stood on top of the pedals, grinding up a climb like this. What you're trying to do on an e-mountain bike is flow up the trail. Next up is seat position. Now, on really steep climbs, you can actually be fully slammed on the seat, whereas a climb like this, it's more of a half squat position. Now, the reason you're doing this is to lower your central gravity, and also it enables you to have a little bit of shock absorption when you're going up over the rooty and steppy ground. Now, on a mountain bike, you might well be in a full seat up position, and that allows you to put lots of power through the pedals, whereas on an e-mountain bike, it's more about momentum rather than that fixed position on the seat. Okay, so I'm coming up, changing my gearing, changing my mode to boost, lowering the seat to half mast, and then going. Now, cadence is king on an eMTB, or at least you'll need to understand how fast you need to spin the motor, because how fast you spin has a direct relationship to how much power you get back. So spinning is great. However, grinding isn't so good. You probably see some old-fashioned mountain bikers hunched over the front like this, turtling up the hill. The other thing about riding an eMTB compared to an MTB is on steep tech climbs, you'll be sat down, you won't be stood on the pedals to try and conquer the trail, because if you try to spin for any prolonged length of time on an eMTB, it simply doesn't work. Okay, folks, next up is the semi. Now, the semi is a position where you're not sat and you're not stood either. And that's because you're trying to soak up the terrain and maintain a low central gravity. Number 7, I would say, is momentum. Now, a lot of time on techie uphill trails on an MTB, it can be very picky, it can be stop-start, whereas the technique on an eMTB, and you can get used to it, is get used to the whole business of flow going uphill. It's almost a new sport. 8 is water. Be very careful with water on an eMTB, although you would be surprised how much moisture an eMTB can deal with. Number 9 is braking. You'll definitely have different braking points on a slightly heavier eMTB to what you will have on an MTB. At the same time, you'll find that a bike such as this is actually more stable, so you might be carrying a bit more speed. And then finally, 10 is charging. What about it? Well, don't forget it.